I just wanted to know that I was doing a good job, that like it was okay no matter what. What to do when you are struggling with perfectionism. I literally cannot leave my house unless my bed is made. Your Instagram is so aesthetic. Consistently feeling like a failure, consistently feeling like I'm not good enough, buried beneath trauma and pain and fear has been too controlling or too restrictive on you. Welcome back, everyone, to the What to Do When podcast. Again, very excited to be here with you today and the amazing Kelsey. And today we have a fun and highly relatable episode, which has actually been spoken about and requested quite a few times. And it is what to do when you are struggling with perfectionism. I think perfectionism is something that I see a lot of clients with. I see a lot of people in my life struggling with it. And I think it's such a byproduct of this world that we live in where we feel so much fucking pressure to keep up, to succeed, to not have regrets. We worry about FOMO. There's just so much pressure in our world today. And I think perfectionism can be a huge symptom of pressure, of unmet childhood needs, so many things. And perfectionism is something that Kelsey really struggles with, I would say, right? So today I'm going to interview Kelsey on her struggles with perfectionism, what she's learned about it, common misconceptions that people might have, what helps, what doesn't help, and how you can sort of start to move through this in a bit of a different way, because I know Kelsey started to look at it really differently, and I have seen that really help her along the way. So let's start with, Kelsey, what is your definition of perfectionism?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say my definition isn't really as much about like trying to make myself seem perfect, but more that my outer world or the things that I do are almost like a reflection of like my inner worth. And so I am working to make everything I present to the world perfect so that no one can really see anything wrong with me.
Totally. Oh my God, I get that so much. So you're saying that the perfectionism isn't so much this, like it's not so much about you feeling like you need to do X, Y, Z or to look X, Y, Z. It's really coming and driven from that place of what will people think? What assumptions will they make about me based on my external appearance, my life, we were talking earlier about have I made the bed or not, about what people see. So it's their assumptions that you're really wanting other people to see you in a certain light. Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely right. It's this whole like outward presentation of like everything I do is somehow a reflection of me. And so it like you said, it's things like making the bed or just like cleaning the house or finishing something at the end of the day. Like I can't finish work unless I finish the one thing I'm working on. So it's almost like a sense that everything has to be a certain way for me to feel like satisfied. I feel like I've done it properly. Otherwise, there's a sense that I've like not necessarily failed, but like left something unfinished. And that is almost like a more uncomfortable feeling for me. It's not about being perfect. It's like I have to finish this before I can do anything else.
Gotcha. So if you've left something unfinished and people see that, what are you super afraid that like they're going to think about you?
I don't know. I think like a lot of times when you see people who are like really messy or just like kind of like sloppy or lazy, like you do make a lot of snap judgments about them. Like what are you up to? Like, what are you doing? Like, why can't you, just get your shit together? And a part of me thinks that people are going to like gossip about me or like make some little comments or think less of me because I am messy or like I don't have my shit together.
So they're going to think less of you. And it's so funny because perfectionism is not something I struggle with. Like definitely, I was thinking about this a lot, and like I definitely hold myself to too high a standard sometimes, and I'll put a lot of pressure on myself, but I don't seem to have any problem overriding when I'm tired or when something's, I don't have a problem with overriding that little voice that says, oh, you should do this or it needs to be better. If I can see the bigger picture, I can see that it doesn't really matter at the end if my bed isn't made at the end of the day or whatever. I don't have any trouble overriding that voice a lot of the time. And I think that's so fascinating to see how different it is, but how a lot of the core wounds that we struggle with are really similar in terms of sort of self-worth and feeling good enough, but they present so differently, right? And so what I do want to ask, because I have made many incorrect assumptions over the years about perfectionism, and it's been so cool to learn more about this coping mechanism and this symptom. what incorrect assumptions do you sort of see people making about perfectionism? Like what almost like stereotypes, you know?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is like that you think you're like a brown noser, like vying for attention in some way, or like trying to just put on this like perfect front, which I guess it kind of is in its essence, but the way it kind of shows up for me is almost like it feels like a sense of control. Like because I've struggled with feeling like I don't have control in my life, especially in like my childhood, having things that I can control, like the way things look, the way I present things, like the projects I work on. That's the one way that I like feel like I have control in my life. And so I'm always trying to use these things as like a way to have that sense fulfilled. And I wish, like, a part of me wishes I wasn't as a perfectionist as I am, but like I don't know how to explain it. It's like I can't not do it. It's like this urge to, I literally cannot leave my house unless my bed is made, and I will make myself late to work if things aren't like put away like where they're meant to. It like really manifests itself as like a form of OCD almost, in a way, like obsessive compulsive disorder, because I literally can't leave things unfinished, and I wish I could stop it. And I think maybe one of those misconceptions is that people are just doing it because they want to like get attention, or they want people to like them, or but it's not really like that for me in its essence. It's more of like I genuinely can't, I feel like I can't not do this.
Interesting. So do you see it as a problem? Like, is it a problem in your life?
To some extent, yes, but the thought of like letting go of it completely, like I don't want that, because I like the way I make things look. I like the amount of effort I put into things. Like I think I do a really good job at the things I do because I have a level of perfectionism and like OCD about it. And there is a degree where I take it too far, and I know that it does control my life a little bit, which is ironic because I'm using it as a way to feel like I'm in control. But the thought of trying to like go so far the other way to like let go of that perfectionism, absolutely not. Like I like how I do things. It's my
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, I will not. And that, oh my God, that's so true, right? Because I think the assumption that I can sometimes make about perfectionism is that it must be annoying and frustrating to experience that. And so you'd want to let that go. But what I really hear you say, and what I have heard from so many other people who've struggled with it, is there's actually a sense of pride in this part of you. And it almost is becoming a part of your identity, you know? And like, it is also something that I have said to you many times before that I actually really admire about you, you know? Like, I remember even talking on another podcast about me feeling insecure because you're always so aesthetic, you know? Your Instagram is so aesthetic. Like, you are very aesthetic as a person. And I often feel like I'm just like, I just don't have whatever that is. I don't possess it. And no matter what I do, I can't get it, you know? And I'm making the link now. I'm like, wow, it's coming from this urge to be seen in a certain way, to have more control. And that is what I want to dig into here, because I feel like we can always let the word perfectionism go, because perfectionism is what it looks like as a behavior. But what the behavior is about, you've said so many times, is about establishing control. So when you have control over something, how do you feel?
safe and like secure and satisfied, because it's exactly how I want it to be, and I know that like I'm the one making those decisions.
And so I would then, if we flip opposite, I would then say that feeling out of control around something, you said something there about that I was the one making those decisions. But when you feel out of control, you don't have that control. You're not the one making those decisions. What's that like for you to think about, and what does it feel like to not be in control fully?
I feel it in my body, even you saying it. I'm like, oh God, no.
Don't make me go. Don't make me go there.
Yeah. Well, it feels like a younger part of me is coming up, the younger part of me that always felt like she didn't have control of her own life. That is the version I feel in those moments. And that's when I kind of make more like impulsive or like erratic decisions, or just feel really like out of myself. And that's when I like impulsive is in like maybe like online shopping, or like, you know, like binge eating on food I like really don't feel like eating, but I feel so much emotion come up when I feel like I'm not in control, that then I start to make these decisions that are really not aligned with myself. And it's almost like those decisions are pulling me farther and farther away from where I actually want to be.
Interesting. So it's almost like the perfectionist tendencies they've actually moved you closer to who you want to be. Because when you have that out of control feeling, actually, no, that's probably a lie. Let me rephrase that. When you feel safe and secure, you have the capacity and the ability to make decisions that feel really good for you, right?
Yeah.
When you feel safe and secure. And the way that you've learned to get that safety and to get that feeling of secureness in yourself is through those perfectionism tendencies, through making sure you've made the bed, through making sure things are set to a certain standard, through, having appearance look a certain way, having, for example, an Instagram post look a certain way. And that gives you that feeling of secureness, of safety. And that is actually what gives you the ability to make that aligned choice about life, right? Because when you're feeling safe and secure, you can actually think things through. When you're not feeling safe and you're not feeling secure, fuck, the decisions that we make from that place, bloody hell, like goes back to one of the last episodes we were talking about, decisions that you make from a place of anxiety and fear. Like those decisions, I look at some of those in my life and I'm like, what the fuck were you thinking, And you're so right. They're often those snap decisions. One thing I want to loop back to though, Kelsey, I know emotional eating and binge eating is something that you've struggled with, and I know it has huge links to control there for you. Can you tell us a bit about that and about how it relates to that lack of control feeling for you?
Yes, I guess the easiest place to start with that is with my childhood. I felt really restricted. I felt like I wasn't in control of my own life because my dad was really controlling. And also, he's a very, very big perfectionist. So I think I mentioned this in the last episode. He has a white and a black. The way he sees the world is very white and black. There's a very true right way and a very true wrong way to do things. And so that was really imprinted upon me at a young age, that there is a right way. And if I'm not doing it the right way, it's wrong. Like even school projects I submitted, I had to like color in things a certain way. I had to make things like, I did this project. This is like a very core memory for me. I did this project in 4th grade about the sun and the solar system. And I had a poster board with all the planets shown on it. And I had to, as like an 8-year-old, figure out the dimensions of the distances between the planets in real life and then convert them down so that they were accurately spaced apart on this poster board. And also color in circles, because coloring in like this isn't actually the right way to do it. So I had to color in circles, figure out the math to space all of these planets accurately apart when I'm 8 on this poster board. This was all my dad. Like this was my dad being like, you have to do this project properly. Like I just had to do a project on the solar system, and it turned into this thing where I was like getting really stressed out because I couldn't do the math properly. I wasn't coloring in things properly, and I turned in the project like a month late because I got so stressed out about it that I like couldn't do it. And the teacher was like, it's a great project, but like you get a D because it's a month late. And it was just this whole like thing that was really hard, and I had to like pay my parents if I got bad grades, and there's all these like
what?
Yeah.
You had pay them cash money at 8 years old?
No, so this was in middle school and high school.
So how old are you? Like 14, 15?
Probably between the ages of 14 to 18, yeah.
So if you got a bad grade, you had to pay them your hard-earned cash monies. How were you earning money at this stage of your life?
As soon as I turned 14, I had to get a job. Like pretty much like the week after I turned 14, I had to get a job. And so I had to like, I was like one of the few kids in my grade who actually had to work. So that was really hard in itself. And then I literally had to pay my parents if I like wasn't getting good enough grades. And so there was like these like,
how did that make
punishment?
Like, how did that make you feel?
Oh,
like how many moments do you remember of having to pay them? Were there a lot of them, or was it like a couple and they were like, never again?
I learned to cheat. And that's the thing with these like really restrictive behaviors. When you restrict someone so much, they will literally blow out the other way. Like it is very, very damaging to be restrictive on someone. And that is kind of how this manifested with food. Like I have binge eating episodes, or I don't really struggle with them as much now because I've done a shit ton of work, but I can see the really clear patterns of when I've been really, really restrictive on how I eat, when I'm really judgmental or trying to be perfect and eat this like perfect diet. If I do that for too long, then I have these massive binges because I've been so controlling, I've been so restrictive that it feels like life's not fun anymore, food's not fun anymore, things aren't fun anymore, and then you literally spiral the other way. And that is like the easiest way I can see that like
any excessive tendency would manifest because someone has been too controlling or too restrictive on you. It was the same for drinking. Like, I wasn't allowed to have a sip of alcohol in the house until the day I turned 21 because it's like the law. Like, my dad's very abides by the law, like as soon as Netflix changed their passwords or changed their like customer policy that you couldn't have family members on your account, he kicked me off. Like the day it came out, he was like, oh, it's against the law now, so you're off. Stuff like that. And so it's periods like that where I really swung the other way. Like, I had problems like binge drinking when I first got into it because my parents had been so restrictive. And so behaviors like that really teach you that there's no balance. It's either like one way or the other. But then because you've been so restricted and so controlling, and when you swing to that other end, there's so much shame because you spent so long thinking you need to be doing it this way that there's no in between to be like, oh, like, it's okay to overeat sometimes. Like, anytime I overate, there would just be such intense shame because I'm like, wow, this is wrong. I'm doing this like so wrong. I'm fucking this up. Like, I'm not perfect. And that makes you want to do the behavior more because you feel so low.
Wow, you nailed that so beautifully. I can just see that swing, right? Between, and I feel like a lot of people would have experienced this with like, you go on, I remember fucking going on a diet, where I was meant to go on a fast for 48 hours, and 6 hours in, I went to my local Thai. I ordered a pad Thai and some chicken satay sticks, and I fucking wolfed it down. But those 6 hours were this awful experience. It felt like I was literally holding myself like off the edge of a cliff, like scared I was going to fall off. And then I did fall off. And it was this overwhelming sense of, oh my God, I'm so like, I'm never going to be able to do anything. I have no willpower. I'm so disgusting, all these things. And it is that massive swing, isn't it? From that grasping, gripping for control and having a lack of safety created around the loosening control. There is a middle ground. The world is in color. It's not just black and white. There's not just one way for you to be considered good or for you to feel good or for you to feel safe. That restriction so early on for you has created so many of these behaviors. And like you said, right, I think with kids in general, the more that you restrict them, they're going to get to a certain age where they will have to rebel. And because they need to test the boundaries, they need to see what lives outside of this, they need to know what the other side is like in order to find out who they are and what their role is in the world. Like, when we're kids, our, two main needs are, safety through belonging and acceptance. But then that second need, which follows right after, is authenticity and who am I, And I feel like for you, that has been this constant battle, because I want to bring you back to what we talked about before, which was where we were sort of leading into perfectionism has become a part of your identity. And it's how you've been able to express yourself almost and sort of find your authenticity versus as a child, in order to get that need of belonging met and acceptance from your dad, who as a child, you have to get that, right? If you didn't get that love from him, your whole nervous system would have collapsed, right? Like, as a kid, you were so driven to seek the approval of mum and dad, and you abandon who you actually authentically are and what you authentically want to please them and to get that love. And then as an adult, it starts to change. It's almost like the more distance you get from mum and dad and the more that you grow up, the more that you go, why the fuck was I being this person? Like, this isn't me. And now you've started to find that path to authenticity instead of being that person that swings back and forth from, binge to restrict in all areas of life to just get through. You've now become this more balanced person. But I feel like for some reason there's still that perfectionism and that control, and it's about the control, isn't it? Because that control gives you the sense of safety and security. And I feel like you authentically at your core are someone who is safe and secure person. But for some reason, it's that perfectionism that has been the road to get you that feeling. And I start to question, I'm like, is that the best road
to safety and security and to being who you are, which, and I was about to answer it, but can you answer that? Is it the best road? Like, are there benefits to this perfectionism? Are there cons to it too?
Yeah, I think obviously I wouldn't say if it's like the best road, because a part of it is like I struggle to leave things unfinished, and it is controlling me to some degree, but I think it's like a healthier avenue than other ones would. But also I'm like a bit biased, because the way I see it is like being a perfectionist in a sense like makes me like more of a hard worker. It makes me like care about things more. There is a huge sense of pride in everything I do, because like I'm creating this, like even the space I live in, I'm creating this space. Like, how can I take care of it? How can I maintain it? And the same goes for anything I do. I like doing a really good job because it's like an expression of my energy. And so to not look after it feels like almost a disservice to myself. And I also feel a lot better when things like, it's funny you say that. Last night I was like getting really anxious and stressed about something inconsequential. And I asked myself, what can I do right now to make myself feel better? So my nails were chipped. So I like repainted them so they weren't chipped anymore because the chip was like bothering me. I like tidied up the house. I like cleaned up my space. I like did a face mask. I did all this stuff. And those little things do actually make me feel really grounded and centered, because I'm taking back control of my emotions. I'm doing something to channel that emotion. Like if I get really anxious or stressed, cleaning really, really helps me, or like decluttering, anything like that really helps me. And I think it is just recognizing that, yeah, there are times when it becomes too controlling, but on its own, when there is a bit of balance, it can be a really healthy avenue to try and process and release those emotions. And that's why I don't see it as something I ever really want to let go of fully, because it does help me in a lot of ways. I think the important thing is finding that balance so that it's not taking over too much control. And so I'm not feeling too restricted by the things that I do.
Gotcha. So it's not I feel like I need to do this or I'm going to die. It's trying to find that safety and security within yourself, which is all the inner work that you've been doing. And then being able to go like, oh no, well, this can now be a tool. If I'm feeling a bit dysregulated, this can be a tool to help me feel a little bit better, gain a sense of pride in my home, to take care of things that are important to me. And what a different energy that is versus like, oh my God, I have to make my bed in the morning because what, like what a different energy that is. And for anyone listening, I really want to hit hard on this point here that she's just made, which is she's found another way to build a sense of safety and security in herself. She has found that sense of who she is outside of her external appearance, what her house looks like. You've really reconnected to that sense of self-worth and self-esteem, which I imagine doing some of the work on the binge eating, doing all this other inner work that you've done for sure. And I do, again, like I want to hit on that assumption that I sometimes make, which is like with perfectionism, it does feel like you sometimes want to get rid of that part, that it's so annoying, like it's stopping you from so many things, because it can limit you in so many ways, right? Like it can keep you staying up too late at night, working on things that you shouldn't be, that really maybe don't matter in the long term. But in the short term, that's all your brain can fixate on. So there is limitations to it. But I also hear that when you're in that place of safety and security and you found that within yourself, there are benefits to this behavior. And it's really about taking pride. And that's cool. That's a really cool thing to actually hear, that it's that you found from working with this perfectionist part of yourself. Can we dig a little bit into the inner child? So your childhood experiences, you've touched a bit on what it was like with your dad coming from this very highly critical black and white parent. My brain is going, I wonder what his parents were like, and I wonder why he's that way, and why maybe this gives him a sense of control in the world, But can we dig a bit into maybe the work that you've done with that younger part of you and your inner child, and how that's led you to finding or refinding your sense of self-worth and safety and security, if it has?
Yeah, it has taken years. It has taken a lot of conscious work to like even address or acknowledge that this part of me exists and that there is a potentially damaging side to it. Like it is so easy to see it and be like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this, but there is. And I do acknowledge that now. It really, when I started going down like the inner work, self-development industry kind of thing, it really took a drastic turn because I started learning all of these things that might help me. And because I'm a perfectionist and I was feeling really lost and low in self-worth, and I am literally outsourcing all my healing to everyone else, to Instagram, to every other website, as a perfectionist, to be so overstimulated with how you should live your life, the tools you should use, like the biohacking, all of that
The
stuff.
morning routine from hell, I can see that just establishing itself. I'm just going, fuck, like for a perfectionist, the self-development vortex is probably the best and worst place you could end up, right? Like all your dopamine centers in your brain would be lighting up because you're basically going, now there's all these new measures and all these new things that I can be a perfectionist at. And it's so overwhelming, and it might continue because perfectionism in a sense can sometimes tend to reinforce the story that you're not good enough. If there's things that you can't actually meet, like, and I feel like that's a common experience for people entering the self-development vortex, as we like to call it. You basically reinforce the story that I'm not good enough because I'm not doing my breath work, because my limiting beliefs aren't clearing fast enough, because I'm not doing this cleanse right, blah, 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 So is that what happened?
Oh my God, to like magnified exponentially. It was a really, really difficult few years in my life because I had all of this information on how to live my life before doing any of the work to really be able to navigate that space safely. And I didn't even like really know what limiting beliefs were. Like I went in completely blind. Suddenly I was reading all these things about how to live and how I wasn't living a perfect life. And it was this huge like grasping energy where I started doing everything, or I started trying to do everything, not being able to commit to anything fully because I'm taking on too much, and then consistently feeling like a failure, consistently feeling like I'm not good enough, and consistently going back to these websites, back to these pages to figure out, okay, well, I'm doing something wrong. I'm clearly doing something wrong here because I'm not feeling better. So it means I need to work harder. It means I need to take on more. I need to invest in this thing. And it was a really damaging time in my life because I was already coming from a place of really low self-worth, that to then gain conscious awareness of the ways I was holding myself back, or the ways that like my childhood or these things had impacted me with zero tools to help me through them. I genuinely felt a huge sense of like desperation of like, I literally am never going to feel better. And no matter what I do, I'll never feel different. And it's not that I'm doing these things wrong. It's that there's just something wrong with me. It like really drilled in that there is something wrong with me. And there is like never going to be a point where I feel good again.
Oh, damn. And that is such a point that so many people get to when they start their healing era or self-development era. They get bombarded and overwhelmed with all this information, and almost, sort of the high of diagnosing yourself, but I've got this wound and I've got this limiting belief and I've got this and I've got that. But it just reinforces the story, I'm not good enough. Something is fucking wrong with me in my bones and it's never going to be fixed, which is the most damaging place you can be. And I remember when we were on a connection call, so Kelsey was my client first a couple of years ago. And I remember on this call, you said to me, you were like, I have spent over $10,000 trying to fix myself and trying to feel better. Nothing is working. This is the last money that I'm going to invest in this. You were pretty much like, you had this real sort of just bucket energy about you. And I remember being so curious, being like, how are you even doing this like this? And I remember it was because a friend who I'd coached had recommended this program to you. And I think that was what maybe pulled you over the edge, because you had that strong recommendation. But I remember that energy in you being like, I'm at rock fucking bottom. I've got nothing fucking else to lose. But after this, I'm done. If this doesn't work, like, I'm done. And I remember going, no pressure, Kathleen, no pressure. And I really had to do this work where I was like, okay, your client results are on them. Like, you can't take full responsibility for them. Like, you've shared what your work is about. You've shared what you're going to teach. You're really passionate about it. And I just remember that so clearly, and it was so cool. Can you tell me about, because we did a lot of inner child work and work with some of those parts of you that just did not feel good enough, good enough. Can you tell us about what that was like? Because really what I'm hearing, like big picture of this podcast, if you're trying to heal perfectionism, you don't actually need to start working on the behavior of perfectionism. You need to look at the root cause and to where it's coming from. And I think for a lot of people, it stems to control, and then it can start to go into a deeper childhood wound. You've heard from Kelsey, her experiences with a highly critical parent and the restriction and the control. And I think that getting to that place where you've gotten to, where you sort of understood this is about how I feel about myself. Like this is about my opinions of myself. It is about my self-worth. It is about me and the safety and security that I cannot create for myself at the moment. And these are all the ways that I've been trying to get safety and security using that perfectionism, and they're not working anymore. And I need to do something different. I need to work on the start rather than continuing to externally sort of outsource feelings of safety and security, which we all need. And they are what reconnect us to that sense of self-worth, because when you feel safe and secure, you can forgive yourself, you can be compassionate, you can give yourself grace. And these are all the things that we need in order to be able to be kind to ourselves and feel good in ourselves, you know? Can you tell me a bit about the experience of working on that in our program, essentially, and then all the work you've done after it too?
Yes, of course. So I think a huge part of when perfectionism is really damaging, it's when that wound is there that you don't feel good enough. And when we were doing this course, I had to like really ask myself, one, what do I feel like I need? Like, what do I want this to give me? And that was to like love myself, to feel like I'm enough. But also a huge thing for me was feeling like I didn't have any power. And so a lot of times when I was a perfectionist, it was this, I'm doing this for other people. I'm doing this to make other people happy. I'm literally giving my power away and learning how to take control of my own life, because I was really stuck in that victim mentality. So taking accountability for it and like taking my power back and realizing, wait a second, I really don't love myself at all. And I need to work on this in order for this to change. And that was really hard because I had to confront the fact of like, yeah, I have really incredibly low self-worth, and that's a thing that's there. How can I now consciously choose to work on this? And it wasn't easy. It was really, really scary. And there was a lot of like really painful, very, very painful things that came up. But one of the things that helped, that you really helped me with, was like, wait a second, like you're spending all these thousands of dollars on these people, but you're actually the one that's healing yourself. You're the one in charge of your healing. Like, yeah, these people might be helping you get there, but at the end of the day, any progress you see, like your body is healing itself through this work. And so that was really beautiful in the way that it gave me that sense of power back. It made me think, oh wait, I can actually like heal myself. I don't have to spend all these thousands of dollars. Like I can do this myself. And another thing that really helped me was finding a modality that really worked for me, because like I said at the beginning of getting into the vortex, you are so overstimulated with options, and I was trying everything in hopes that the one of these things that I tried would be the thing that magically saved me. I really thought that I was gonna like drink an elixir and suddenly like not ever feel bad again, you know? And I'm like, where's the imagine with the magic potion? Oh, that's so good. Yeah, looking for that quick fix. But when we did this program and you were teaching me at the time, like you're responsible for your healing, and then you were collaborating with Kyle, who did this form of energy healing that I fell in love with. I then found a modality, a way to actually release the limiting beliefs and identify them that felt really, really good for me. And it was like this like lock and key situation where I was thinking, oh, this is what I've been searching for. This is the thing that I actually want to pursue in my like self-development journey. Instead of trying all these different things I see, I really had to start building a relationship with my body in what felt right, in the choices that I made. And I've mentioned this before, but really evaluating how your nervous system and how your body responds when you make choices. And for me at the beginning, this was really hard because I had no trust in my body. I had no power. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel good enough. So to then suddenly be like, oh, I'm in control of my healing, and now let me think what feels good. Really hard.
like really difficult. And it's taken me months to like, took me months, years really to try and like hone in that voice.
Yeah.
But even just starting small with like journaling or just reflection or having a conversation with a friend after you do something and you just notice how it like lights you up, notice like the way your voice changes when you speak about something you're passionate about. And that was like a really beautiful way to move from that toxic perfectionist energy to, okay, this part of me exists, but like now I'm addressing the core wound and it's not as bad.
So true. And like, I just heard all these themes of taking back that sense of control. And I want to hit the point here. Kelsey did not have control in her early life. Right and wrong were distinguished and set by her dad. So she had no internal compass of what is right and what is wrong, what feels good to me and what doesn't feel good to me. It was always externally resourced, right? It was always dad's opinion is the one that matters. And then when you become an adult where you don't have that sense of what feels right for me and what doesn't feel right for me, when you don't have that, then you start to try and find it in other places because that's the only way you know how to get that. And that feeling of knowing what's right for you and what's wrong for you and what feels good and what doesn't feel good creates that sense of I know myself, I trust myself, I feel safe and secure within myself, and I can make decisions for myself that are for my highest good. And that's such a powerful place to be because it's not necessarily that you have control. I think it's that you have trust, right? That even if you walk down the wrong fucking road for 5 more years, you can course correct and you can come back to yourself because you have this relationship now with your intuition, with your body, with your energy that actually communicates with you rather than having to look to those external resources, which is so easy to do when you step into the self-development arena or even when you're chronically ill. Like I remember going through IBS, I think you were something similar, Kelsey, where I was just bombarded with all these like supplements, all these, diets that I should be trying to fix it, all these doctors I should be seeing, all these practitioners. And it was constantly that external sense of power that they had over me and they were going to fix me. And I had no say in this myself and I had no ability. And that sucked, right? That was a shitty place to be versus when we take the stance of really taking self-responsibility, which it is, that leads you to that place of, oh, I'm doing this. Like I'm the one who's actually making these decisions, taking these steps, doing this stuff. And I'm the one that's doing this, and it shifts you out of the inner child and into your secure adult self. And that was, funnily enough, I think the journey that I got to watch you go on was finding that and being like, oh my God, I have an adult self. Like she fucking exists. And she did. She was there the whole time. She was just buried beneath trauma and pain and fear and so much suppressed emotion, and learning those skills and finding what worked for you and just fucking empowering yourself to like really back you was everything for you. And it's so funny that you say like the missing piece and the importance of finding a modality that you've chosen that works for you. I think that's so important. And I have seen it happen time and time again with clients where they've found something, be it energy work, be it somatics, inner child, parts work, EMDR, whatever it is, right? They've found something that has worked for them. They've connected with it. They choose it and they choose it again and again and again. And they find that sense of empowerment. And you manage to drown out the rest of the noise, right? Because you're like, nothing else matters. I don't need to learn anything else. I just need to do this and repeat that process and build trust. And that's amazing. Kelsey, I want to finish really powerfully on, if you were talking to somebody right now who is really struggling with perfectionism, with not feeling good enough, what would you recommend that they do, that they start, that they continue? What advice would you give them from your heart to theirs? Get ready, everyone.
I think
no pressure.
Part of it is, I know, right? I think a big part of it for me was understanding where it came from, because when I like looked back on my life and thought, how did this behavior develop? And then I could see really clearly, oh yeah, there were many, many reasons why I would have felt this way. It validated my feelings a lot. And it also gave me a sense of compassion towards myself because I could see, wow, this is a really young version of me that got hurt. And it's only natural. It only makes sense that I would have developed these feelings. And so spending some time, if it feels safe to do so, to think about why you might feel this way. And in those moments, when you think about those memories, think about then, what would you have rather given yourself in that moment? Like, how could that situation have like better played out for you? And see if you can give yourself any of that in the present moment. So for me, what I really wanted was praise. I just wanted to know that I was doing a good job, that like it was okay no matter what.
Yeah.
And so how can I, give myself praise in the present moment, to give myself the need that my younger version never fully got? How can I show that to myself now? And I do also want to say, for anyone who is a perfectionist, and this is something that I have really like struggled to practice, but as a perfectionist, you want everything your way. You want everything to be a perfect way, but you really need to take a moment to realize not everyone else wants it the same way that you want it, and let go of the control of how other people do it. Yeah, we're always like wanting to do it for a sense of our control, but I really have to practice this of like, Harry, my housemate, sees the house clean in a whole different way, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with his way. I can do it my way, but I can't be judgmental or critical of people who do it their way. And so narrowing your control to only be around you, and also make the focus about you, not how other people are doing it, not how like your parents didn't do it, but how can you give yourself what you need, and how can you make this about you and your journey, and figure out what feels right to get you through this.
Oh, that is beautiful. And that's very concrete, right? Like, what did you not receive in your childhood? How can you give that to yourself now? And that's such an endless practice, isn't it? And make it about you. I love that, because so often we do tend to, it's easier to make it not about us, right? Because when we make it about us, we have to take responsibility, we have to take accountability. And that's hard, right? It's way easier to project all our shit onto fucking housemate Jack's version of clean versus my version of clean, and be like, he's the problem, not me. That's so, again, difficult to really look at yourself and bring it back to you, but also extremely powerful when you combine it with that beautiful thing of giving yourself what you need in that moment. And oh my God, praise. How good is praise? How good is praise when things aren't perfect? When you've just tried. Like, there's all this flack at the moment about kids getting participation certificates. And I'm like, for all the perfectionists out there, getting a participation certificate and putting it up on the fucking wall will be so healing, So like, participate, everyone. Give yourself that participation certificate and give yourself that praise, because it's so, like, the voices in my head now are so incredibly different to what they were. And I had to work so hard on being compassionate. Like, one of the first courses I created was self-critical to self-compassionate. And I chose to do it and break down that process was because I knew how damaging having a self-critical inner voice could be. Like, you're never going to get anywhere if that voice in your head is constantly berating you, right? You have to learn how to change that inner voice and how to give yourself compassion and kindness and grace and forgiveness, which, ironically, when you think about the people that you love and admire the most in your life, they're the people that give you that, right? Like, when I think about you, you are the person that I love so dearly because you give me grace and compassion and forgiveness. And you are kind to me when I'm struggling to be kind to myself in those dark moments. You listen to me, you support me, And I think if we can be that person for ourselves as well, it's just times 10, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, you've nailed it.
Love it. Thank you, Kelsey, for being so radically honest and real about what it's like with living with these perfectionist tendencies. And it's cool because it's not something that you need to get rid of, and it's not about that behavior. There's no shame in it. It's really about doing that work for you on your self-worth, self-esteem, and creating that sense of safety and secureness within yourself, which is something all of us can work on. And we generally all end up doing some of the work on, right? So thank you so much for listening, everyone. We will be back next week, Monday. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear from you. And if you can, rate, review, share the podcast. And yeah, share it with someone. The most powerful feedback I always get is when somebody personally sends this episode to a friend of theirs and it hits them deep in the chest. So a reminder of how powerful one message can be to someone who might be struggling. We love you so much, and we'll see you next week.
See you.